Welcome to Design Talks Now, hosted by Design Pavilion, held annually in the plazas of Times Square and created to help inform the general public on architecture, design, and urban planning. I'm Eileen Shaw, producer of Design Pavilion and Design Talks. Today is the last of our three-part series, Norway Design, a Symbiosis with Nature. As the world becomes more aware of what is having a positive and negative effect on the planet, Norway has developed innovative and sustainable ways of processing natural resources. In conversation today, we'll discuss human creativity and enterprise in harnessing what nature has to offer, and how renewable energy, technology, and innovation can shape the future of sustainable natural materials, such as stone and aluminum. First, we'll hear from Harriet Berg, Norway's Consul General in New York. The United States is Norway's second most important export market and the third most important source for imports. Yes, so we share an important relationship. We're very pleased to present Sustainable Materials, the Future. And now let's begin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Harriet Berg. I'm the Norwegian Consul General here in New York, and it's a great pleasure for me to wish you a warm welcome to the third of the Norwegian Design Talks. The Norwegian Consulate General in New York traditionally works in the physical space to promote Norwegian business and culture. But with the dramatically changed world around us, we find that we actually can enjoy conversations over distance and engage a wider number of stakeholders than we usually do. I'm very pleased that the Norwegian Design Talks Now is a part of the Design Talks Now program. In this last of a three-part series, we will hear more about the use of sustainable materials and a low emissions approach. I've had the pleasure to knowing the work of Hydro and Lunds through our previous collaborations. And I have to admit that I've never been so interested in aluminium and stone before. I know that you will enjoy this dive into materiality of design and be inspired by the materials we are surrounding ourselves with every day. If you missed the previous two talks, they are available on the Design Talks Now website, and I highly recommend you to take a look. I also want to give a big thank you to Gareth Johnson, whom the consulate has a long-standing relationship with in the design space and who has worked to pull all this together and will moderate the discussion. We also need to thank everyone at Design Pavilion that has made Design Talks Now programming possible and kept the conversations about the future of good design vibrant while we have faced a changing world. It's also very nice to see our Norwegian partners joining us. Jean-Marc Moulin, Sustainability Director in Extruded Solutions in Norsk Hydro, and Tor Anders Lund Håkestad, CEO at Lunds. Now, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the conversation.
Days without sunlight and nights without darkness. Norway is powered by nature, and so are we. We are a society built on equal opportunities, which might be the reason why we're the happiest people in the world. Our coastline, rivers, and fjords form the backbone of our main industries. That's why we are pioneers within marine technology, agriculture, and energy. Adapting new technology, we must strive to design greener, better, and smarter. By exploring the exceptional, we are pushing for a new standard.
Hi everyone, I'm Garrett Johnson, Creative Strategist for Brand Development. I'm thrilled to be here today in conversation with this insightful pair of speakers, sharing their perspectives on how human creativity and enterprise is harnessing what nature has to offer, and how renewable energy, technology, and innovation can shape the future of sustainable natural materials. I'm excited to introduce Thor Anders Lund Hegstad, who is the CEO of Lunds AS. Thor has a bachelor's degree in business administration from the Norwegian Business School. He has a strong interest in developing business and holds several board positions within various types of industries, including the Norwegian Mineral Industry Trade Association, Skitfisk, and Let's Talk. His vision is to not only be a supplier of natural raw materials, but that Lundhus will move towards providing sustainable solutions for the hard surface industry in the near future. Lundhus is a family-owned company and the largest producer of natural stone in Northern Europe. Lundhus Real Stone is a collection of 100% natural stone from Norway, made from larvikite and anorthosite, crafted by nature millions of years ago. The exceptional stone combine unique aesthetics with excellent performance to create the ideal surface choice for worktops and tiles. For Lundhus, sustainability is about respecting precious stone resources and to handle it with consideration. In practice, it means that quarries must be managed in accordance with strict environmental requirements and must always strive for the best practices, like reusing water, minimizing emissions from machines, working more efficiently, minimizing transportation, and utilizing every bit of the stone from the quarry production. In Norway, there are regulations and certifications, but as a company, Lundhus looks for improvements beyond the regulations. This is also reflected in their values: precision, engagement, and respect. Jean-Marc Malun is a sustainability director for Hydro Extruded Solutions. Having joined as Energy Solutions Manager in 2008, prior to his current position, he has held a number of different roles within the organization. Originally from Grand Duché Luxembourg, he holds the MSc in Construction Engineering and an MBA from Leuven School of Management. He started his career in 1995 as a project engineer designing civil works in Luxembourg, then moved to building skin solutions and specializing in building physics, sustainable products, active and passive solutions related to solar and renewable energies. After some years as sales and marketing director for the Hydro Building Systems business unit, he returned to his beloved field of expertise and where his passion lies, sustainability, since 2017 for Hydro Extruded Solutions. Hydro is a global supplier of aluminum with purpose to create a more viable society by developing natural resources into products and solutions in innovative and efficient ways. Hydro operates the largest primary aluminum plant in Europe. With 35,000 employees in 40 countries on all continents, Hydro combines local expertise, worldwide reach, and unmatched capabilities in research development. In addition, Hydro operates 17 hydraulic power stations. These power stations produce electricity for many of Hydro's aluminum plants in Norway. Based in Norway and rooted in more than a century of experience in renewable energy, technology, and innovation, Hydro is committed to strengthening the viability of its customers and communities, shaping a sustainable future through innovation aluminum solutions. Thor and Jean-Marc, hello and good afternoon. What role does low emissions and nature have to play in being sustainable stone supplier and aluminum manufacturer? Why natural materials?
Well, first of all, I think that we believe that it's important for suppliers of building materials to take responsibility for minimizing emissions, so that we can be part of delivering solutions instead of being a problem. And nature's role in this is providing some exceptional raw materials that really stand out. And I would like to just say a little bit about Lunds materials, because the type of stone that Lunds is quarrying is a type of stone called monzonite. And it mainly consists of the feldspar mineral, and that makes it differ from other types of natural stone like marble or granite. And this type of monzonite is only found here in Larvik, Norway, and therefore the geological name, larvikite. And it was crafted from nature almost 300 million years ago and very, very deep down into the Earth's crust. And at that depth, there was such a high temperature and pressure. So it took nearly 8 million years for the magma to harden. And this process gave the material some exceptionally good properties, like you were mentioning earlier, with the extreme density, which means there's no staining, no need for sealers, and it's practically maintenance-free. In addition, being also scratch, heat, and UV resistant, it's excellent for surfaces and outdoor and indoor. And there's the uniqueness part of it, of course, that is not a product that is being mass-produced, but each and every piece is unique. And this, in combination with a total impact on nature, this is what really makes the Lunds material special.
Fantastic. It's amazing the different types of natural materials that form over different regions. And the fact that this is exclusively available from Norway is really interesting. And it is truly a beautiful stone. I've seen it myself. Jean-Marc, how do low emissions play a part in your natural resources and mining?
Well, as Thor said, when you are a manufacturer, whatever your size, you are transforming things, and that means that it's coming with an effect. So our duty as responsible manufacturers to reduce our footprints, and that's across the full value chain, all the steps that are needed to produce your stuff, from the material extraction to the end of life. And of course, we have the dream to be one day positive, but before that, we have to reduce our emissions and have this respect for nature and also for people.
Indeed. And similarly, since we're speaking of Norway and also mindfulness towards the future and future populations, how has legislation or other modes of support in Norway eased some of the challenges in sustainability practices and product development and supply chain? How are you supported in that way, and what challenges have you met going forward?
For our part, I truly believe that sustainability development in Norway, actually it's a good combination of first the people, the industries and the authorities. I think that people want to be green, or there is no one that want to be dirtier, or they are insane. And industries embrace in Norway sustainability quite well because they found it interesting to continue to develop in a sustainable manner. And then the authorities also in Norway are very active. Actually, they are both promoting and regulating how you deal with the environment, the social, and the governance. So I think it is the perfect mix that you have in Norway for that.
Thor, similarly, what regulations are you met with that support your efforts in sustainability, or challenges that are presented as a result?
Well, we believe that in Norway we have very strict regulations, and we think that is a very positive thing because it helps us also give credibility to the materials coming from Norway. And we see now that from the government side, we believe that they have very strong tools when it comes to government procurement and how they use this and weight this when they do public buildings.
Very interesting. And Jean-Marc, one of the interesting things about Hydro is that it seems like it's almost an energy company before it's a metal aluminum company. Can you tell us a little bit about the innovations behind energy production and how you're able to sustainably create energy in order to produce aluminum and aluminum alloys?
Yeah, it's a good question. That for Hydro, actually today, aluminum and energy is actually very well related, and they are both equally important. And that's the reason why we have a business unit that is dedicated to energy production. Historically, Hydro started to build and to operate hydroelectric power stations more than 100 years ago. So this is in the DNA of the company, and of course, with the evolution of technologies, with the evolution of digitalization, this production of energy has been improved, and we make more and more use of that in our different operations. Of course, in Norway, and we strive to increase also the share of renewables everywhere we have operations.
And you also use solar as well, and wind, is that right?
Yeah, of course. So, of course, we have the chance to have a certain amount of hydroelectric power stations in Norway, but also we do operate large wind farms as well as wind turbines and solar arrays that are located in the premises themselves. And of course, we make use of different type of renewable energies like heat pumps. One thing that we tried also to increase more and more whenever it's possible is the cogeneration. When we have an excess of heat coming from processes, for instance, we try to do something else with that heat instead of just warming the birds off-site. That can be producing electricity with that excess of heat. Also participate to the community by providing heating to urban areas. And then also we have started project to store energy. When you have two wind turbines on site, they are turning during the nights where you may have lower productions concerning the way you operate. So you have an excess of electricity. So this is an opportunity for us to store the excess of electricity and to reuse it later when our operations are working.
Interesting. And I want to get back to that topic too of excesses or leftovers, especially with Thor. In congruence with that. But Thor, really curious, I know you're not necessarily an energy first company in the case of mining stone. However, you have taken certain measures to use energy effectively while mining and manufacturing. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
So in Norway, our electricity is based on hydropower, and also our suppliers of electricity, they strive to be carbon neutral. So they do a really big effort in terms of supplying clean energy. When it comes to our extraction, we use a lot of heavy machinery, and unfortunately, we haven't seen too many possibilities on that side yet. But we are very eager to embrace new technology, and this is a big possibility for us to improve in the future, I believe.
It's really brilliant to me that you found ways to use almost every inch of stone you're extracting from the earth. How are you able to do that? And what ways have you found to embrace even the smallest piece?
We are constantly being challenged by the Norwegian authorities when it comes to minimizing surplus. And we accept that challenge voluntarily because this is a very important thing for us. So the target for Lunds is to reach a 100% utilization of everything that we extract from the mountain every year. Over the last few years, we've been able to increase our recovery rate around 8% to reach more than 40%. But still at that level, there are few or none other building surfaces that can match the low carbon footprint during a lifespan as natural stone. But we are about now to transform one of our three main plants into enabling this place to reach 100% utilization. Now, this mainly is due to three areas of use, and this is, of course, been through innovation. But one part is with the shaped blocks, because when we extract the rough blocks from the mountains, we also have shaped blocks that don't fit into the criteria of surfaces. And they are used in mainly for building all kinds of walls. And this can be from public infrastructure projects to private gardens. And then we have unshaped blocks, which mainly is used for coastal protection. So that could be like wave breakers or just holding on to land to avoid erosion. And these kind of products we've been shipping all the way from Norway to the Bahamas, as local stones are lighter and porous, and therefore erodes faster. And the third big important area is as a raw material for crushed stone. So this could be for like supporting layers in road and railroad building, and they can also be used in concrete or asphalt or other products.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I even saw in one of your images, one of the artists who created bowls had coated some of their products with the dust of the stone, which created a whole nother texture and element to this product. And really a tactile feel, which is wonderful about an experience in a product. So I love that it's touching, that the stone is being used and is touching from surfaces in industrial situations to truly intimate products that we enjoy tactilely through our day. And Jean-Marc also, with waste, aluminum is highly recyclable. However, it does take a lot of energy to produce it, as you mentioned. How are you dealing with waste with aluminum, or even taking responsibility for that? How do you get it back to the factory or recount for it after it's gone out into the world and is used for whatever it's used for?
Well, we have a chance with aluminum as it is considered, and it is actually a permanent material. So that means when you recycle it, when you reheat it, when you remelt it, it will go back to its original crystallographic structure. So it will be identical. So that means that we can enjoy actually a very high recycling rates in a lot of applications like buildings, where it is above 96% in Europe, the car industry as well, above 90%. So that means every aluminum piece that is embedded in a car or present in a building will be eventually recycled, and to create again an aluminum object. And that's the advantage of metals, is that they can be recycled over and over. The second chance that we have concerning the remelting and recycling aluminum is that it requires only 5% of the primary energy that was needed to create it from the extraction of the ore into the production of primary aluminum. So it makes really sense to recycle aluminum, and that's for us really both a value, because it has a value, but also an identity, because you can recycle again and again, and actually purely closing this circular loop of the circular economy. And that, I think, for aluminum, one of the great characteristics of that metal.
That's amazing, especially since a lot of things break down the more you recycle them, from paper to plastic, everything. The fact that aluminum retains much of its value as a material in the recycling process is incredible. You mentioned that 5 times the energy required to produce aluminum than to recycle it. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
No, actually, when you recycle aluminum, when you remelt scrap, and by the way, if you have scrap, you can give it to us. We will make something with that. It requires just 5%, or you have a saving of 95% of the energy that was needed if you want to actually source aluminum from the bauxite ore and process to all the different production steps. So it makes really sense to recycle aluminum.
Amazing. And so how much energy does it take to manufacture aluminum from the first source?
The smelting, actually, the sort of transformation of alumina into aluminum, in the smelting, the global average is actually 14.1 kilowatt hour per kilogram of aluminum. So it's quite a lot of electricity that is required to produce aluminum. So this is the reason why we strive to improve actually the operations and the smelting operation, and that's a lot of R&D that's involved, but also to ensure that we use a maximum amount, and for Norway, for our operations, 100% of renewable energies. There is a trajectory, and I think that every company that is taking sustainability as a serious matter wants one day to be carbon neutral. And we have started a new climate strategy last year, which has actually an ambition to reduce our emissions by 30% for 2030. Hydro, being a quite mature company using mature operations, the way to get there, to reduce 30% a mature operation organization, can only be done by having innovation and breakthrough new techniques that allow us to improve those different operations.
Right, and Hydro invests quite a bit in that kind of research and development.
You bet, yep.
Indeed. Well, and similarly, Thor, natural stone is not easily a renewable resource. It takes millions of years. So how are you taking responsibility for repurposing that stone? Or how do you see repurposing this eternal material that may outlive the purpose or its owners?
First, I'd just like to comment on what Jean-Marc said, because it was really interesting to hear about both how you source your energy from renewable resources, but also the eye opener in terms of how important recycling is, and how important it is to do that as much as possible. It's really fascinating to hear. When it comes to stone, of course, what you mentioned about the lifespan, that's of course one of the biggest advantages, that it's almost limitless. And then it's a question about how do you build on that, or how do you profit from that. So, like for natural stone for cladding, I think it's certified to last at least 80 years at the exterior of a building. But you can easily reuse them and do 80 more years. There's no limitation there at the 80 years. So, but we need to work on system on how to reuse these claddings and when buildings are being taken down. When it comes to worktops, we have been in touch with some companies that today they pick up your old appliances. For example, if you buy from IKEA and they come and pick up your old appliances, we have been discussing with these kind of companies in terms of if they can come and take your kitchen worktop when you buy a new one. But we haven't come to any solutions there yet. But this is interesting for us to investigate further in the future. Because without the cutout, they can easily be reused many times. With the cutout, of course, it's less likely that it's going to fit in another kitchen, but it can be cut into smaller pieces like tiles or something like that. For example, today we are using cut-offs from the production of the kitchen worktops to use in other kinds of like smaller tabletops. The same is with building systems, that if they are used together with building systems that hold the natural stone and you don't have to glue it or stick it to the building, they can be reused over and over again. So it's a lot of possibilities here in terms of using them. And then smaller pieces can be used in design articles, like some of the products we've been doing together with Norwegian designers, like the Epilogue series or Essence. After that, they can be used as a raw material for crushed stone, as we mentioned earlier, that we use the surplus for today. But this also stone that has been used for other purposes can, of course, also be crushed and used for this. But then at the end of the life cycle, there's nothing added to the stone because it's non-porous, so you don't need to treat it or add anything to it. So that means that day it goes back into nature again. It's nature coming back. So it really makes a really good life cycle.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And again, back to the provenance of something, being that you own this and you're really interested in where the life of these products are going, where the stone is going, the aluminum being recycled, and then coming up with other alloys that service certain characteristics and qualities in the built environment. And provenance, I think, can also, and with technology and innovations being developed, that you can track where these items go, that you might be able to recall them and ultimately recycle them in another way, where companies are interested in taking ownership of that. That leads to what we had been talking about also on branding these natural materials. I mean, you guys both have this branded exclusive product that other people are not able to duplicate, with Lindhouse Stone being exactly from where you are, and Jean-Marc with your alloys and the different functionalities of those while you're developing that in the forms of technology. How do you see the future of branding these natural materials, and can that lend itself to tracing the product and bringing it back to the recycling stage at the end of life and cradle to cradle full circle?
Well, first to answer on branding, and that's an engineer speaking about branding, so it's marketing. So when branding is working, engineers start to work to talk about that. But concerning us, what we wanted really to do with those branded alloys is actually to work on 4 elements, which we believe are quite important. The first one is to have recognition, to be remarkable on the market, then also to be able to differentiate, because aluminum piece is an aluminum piece. So how can you be different, bringing something else to the market that is talking to the customers? Storytelling is of course important because it's part of the way you will present your product, your solutions with the brand name. And then the most important for me is the continuous improvement that is linked to branding. And why is it important? Because when you have a non-brand, you have to improve and you have a reputation to maintain. That's the first reason, but also because your competitors are behind you. So there is also striving to have brand names, to have branding on industrial product, I would say, like aluminum alloys, is a way to improve in the technology, in your emissions, in the characteristics, to be sure that you are still on the leading edge.
Indeed. So it's interesting to think about hydro aluminum being noted on products, much like when we receive a computer and it says built with Intel.
That would be great to have that. Let's say it's Hydro Circal or Hydro Reduxa inside, to have those labels attached to windows, which we do actually already today, but also to furniture and design objects. So that means that we are proud of this, of the alloy, but also the object we have supplied to the designer or the customer. But they are also proud of what they have received from us. And I think it's a win-win situation. And I certainly think that this is applicable also to the stones of Thor.
Yeah, and I would imagine for the consumer to see that label branded on something that they're using, to go, oh, this company went so far as to source this product from Norway. There's obviously a reason for that, and really appreciating that. It's almost like having a souvenir from a place of travel where you start to feel a little bit more of an emotional connection with the fact that this has gone through the trouble to say this is exceptional because of. And similarly, as you mentioned, with Thor and stone. So again, this is exclusive to where you are and of its own characteristic and quality and a long lifespan with very, very little maintenance. Something that the discerning consumer can very much appreciate, and even moving into commercial buildings and construction developments in the future. How do you see branding applying to Lindhouse beyond what you've already accomplished?
Well, for us, the branding is one of the bigger shifts that has happened within our industry, but still we are one of the few players that has done this step and moving towards the branded stones. But for us to have Lund's Real Stone as a brand is essential in marketing and communicating with decision makers, and those being architects, designers, specifiers, consumer, to be able to tell the story about where the stone comes from, the origin of it, everything surrounding the stone is essential for us. And for the stone, we had to start with nomenclature. And so that means that taking our stones from a generic material and giving it unique and registered names. And there's so many benefits connected with that, because one of them, of course, is traceability, which you touched earlier, that you can go back and find them. But also for us, it's also about the other way, because if you have generic names on stones, anyone can claim that they have a similar material, even if the materials don't have the same technical specifications or even the same appearance. But they can say that it's the same material. So then with traceability, we are able to document the technical specifications and guarantee them. We can do environmental declarations. So in example, we can now do specific EPDs for our products delivered in the US. And that's not very common for natural stones. And we are also, it's very important for us to provide documentation and test data instead of what we see with all greenwashing and everyone saying how green they are. But when you have a brand, you can really also go into the documentation and confirm that this is really what the material is about. So, and what I also like, I think also Jean-Marc touched this, that it also gives something back to you when you do a big effort to stand out and to improve something, because when you can tell about it and then guarantee that this is the exact same material that you're being provided, that makes a really, really big difference. And that helps us to enable decision makers to select the right product for the right use.
Absolutely. And to even trust you to maintain it, should there ever be complications going forward, or even upgrade it when new technologies are available. It's an absolute partnership, which makes it also a very valuable branded element to your cohorts and collaborators. Absolutely interesting. And I wonder, do you see blockchain then playing a part in that, and technologies allowing you to document and trace with permanence the product that you're creating, that you're distributing, especially as you move more globally and into the US markets? And similarly, Jean-Marc, to know how many times an element has been recycled or what that alloy contains, and then the variances of those alloys to get to what we had talked about earlier, refining the variety of what you offer. Do you see blockchain playing a big part in the future of the way you do business and branding these products?
Well, blockchain certainly is something that will come more and more important for companies, especially when you deal with several application segments like the car industry, for instance, or other type of industries that require you to come with a several amount of characteristics and numbers. And more and more of those are metrics related to the environment. As Thor mentioned, traceability in that case is key, to know where you have extracted your raw material and what was the different steps that material is faced to become the end product. And if you are a sustainable company, you can differentiate and reduce your emissions. Every of those tiny steps may give you a tiny advantage, which at the end eventually will give you a bigger advantage versus your competition. But you need to prove it. EPDs, environmental product declarations, is a way to do it. And you have seen what Thor said is exactly the behavior of Norwegian companies. When you deal with Norwegian companies, you can expect trust and transparency in the data. So yes, blockchain certainly is more than a buzzword. It will not be easy to implement because it's still very technical. But we have our I&T department, Innovation and Technology department, looking into that to see how blockchain can help us, but also help the relationship with the customers and sometimes also with architects in the case of building information modeling that you have when you're working on green building rating schemes.
And similarly, Thor, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we certainly believe that new technology is going to help us to enhance the journey of the consumer, so that we can connect with them more easily if there should be any troubles or something. But we also believe strongly that consumers should demand this in a much stronger way to know where the materials have been sourced from.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, as Jean-Marc mentioned, that's already baked into the Norwegian way of doing business, which I find absolutely fascinating, and perhaps even an advantage to Norwegian exports, as consumers in America especially will be holding companies accountable for the products they produce. And you'll already have a leg up on that as we start to uncover some of these things that are maybe less transparent and pose problems to our environment. but we had talked a little bit about agriculture and the involvement of stone in agriculture. And that's a really interesting thing to me too, because we do have some threats coming into the agriculture, especially here in the US and in Norway. You embrace it. You embrace agriculture. You're very much in touch with the environment and putting back into the soil what you take from it. So to that end, stone, you're using that and grinding it up and making studies and technologies advancement in contributing to the soil in that way. How do you see Lundhaus creating product towards an agricultural innovation?
We see that as a very exciting possibility. So therefore, we are working closely with universities for agriculture, and we are doing testing together with them to see what kind of impact the dust that comes from our quarries can make. But this is already something that comes out from our process of extracting the mountain with wire sawing and drilling. So it's about finding uses for these kind of for this stone. And we really see some positive results from this. And one of that is raising the pH of the soil, because several products today, when increasing the pH, they react with the soils and they also make some gases that are not good for the environment. So we are curious to see how that goes forward.
That's very interesting. I would like to see if there are partnerships available in the US where they're seeing studies on pH balance, especially in the Midwest, and the soil being, they've used the term raped of its pH balance and even bacteria essential to growing lucrative crops. So it would be interesting to see some partnerships taking place there. Jean-Marc, how is hydro contributing to agriculture? Is that an area you're hoping to move into or see as an interest for hydro?
Well, Hydro was busy with fertilizers a long time ago as a company, and then it moved to the production of aluminum and production of energy. But of course, we have different impact concerning that. So it's probably related to the greener mining thing that we are working on, is to reduce and minimize our impact on nature. Harvesting bauxite, which is the ore that is needed to produce aluminum, is a shallow mining activity. So actually, you are not going very deep in the crust of the earth, barely the skin of the earth. But anyway, you have an impact. So what we do there is of course, to continue to make research on biodiversity, to know how we can limit our influence. But after the mine has been closed, how we can rehabilitate that location as fast as possible to reforest it and to give it back to nature. We are also working on improving the techno processes around extracting the ore, as Thor also explained for their processes. And then for us, one of the aim also is to find new opportunities and new uses for the secondary materials that are actually produced by the transformation of the ore into aluminum. We have product that is remaining, and there are some opportunities today to use that remaining product. So it's a large quantity. It's a challenge, but there are some ideas. There are already things that are existing today, but you need to be very holistic here to find additional ideas to cope with those volumes. And of course, one thing that is also extremely important for Hydro, and that's because also it is deeply rooted to the Norwegian, let's say, behavior, is to continue to work on supporting and caring the workers in the communities where we have our mining operations. And for Hydro, it is in Brazil.
Interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Mining is a sensitive subject for sure, even at a shallow level of affecting the earth. Scientists have recently uncovered that we are now entering a phase where we are affecting the actual geological makeup of the earth. So while we may need these materials and while we may require mining, how are we able to do that in a better way? How are you doing it in a better way? And how are you ensuring the health and well-being of the miners and the workers who are out on those locations?
Well, I guess again, I think that the story of the stones of Thor is great when he mentioned the percentage improvement from the extraction from 8% to 40. This is really great. Of course, it is something that we can also aim a bit in the bauxite extraction, even if today those the highest ratio are already obtained. Now, clearly, as to minimize your impact. And on the other hand, this is also the second chapter actually of the way we use the material is the recyclability, and to make sure that we increase the urban mining and recycling of post-consumer scrap. So this is where also we want to continue to work, to strive to increase those recycling ratios and to find, let's say, new opportunities of urban mining to get those noble permanent material back in the loop.
Got you. So it will be about increasing efforts of recycling and closing that gap of the full circle, cradle to cradle kind of development and product life cycle. Let's circle back a little bit to, again, how nature impacts all of this. So why natural materials so much? If we're affecting our environment in these ways, how do you see that being still more important than creating synthetic substitutions? I think this is a good question for you to start with, Thor, since natural stone is natural stone. But we do have a lot of other surfaces. So what's the difference between the two, and why is natural stone so important and valuable to us?
When it comes to some of the benefits with natural stone, of course, essential part for the future is that the amount of emissions that are used in order to produce the materials. And we are continuously working on developing how we extract materials and to become more efficient. So we don't know any materials today that offering the same or lower footprint during the lifespan as a surface. Now, also all of our quarries, they are close to the sea, so that means also limited land transport. And since they're being 100% natural, nothing added to them like resins or sealers, that also make them more resistant to heat or scratch or even UV. So they're perfect just both for indoors and outdoor use. And of course, then the low maintenance means also low emissions during the lifespan, because you don't need to treat it and you have low emissions when it comes to maintenance. And then again, reuse. It's possible to reuse the materials. They can be recycled, and then at end of life, there's nothing added to them. So there's no special waste going back to the nature again. It's 100% nature coming back.
Right. So sustainability really extends beyond just it being of natural material, but also in your transportation, being close to the sea and less ground transport, also in the recyclability of it, and the fact that there are no sealers in the composition of it, and even therefore water use as much as, say, manufacturing of a synthetic material.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course you have the uniqueness. It's your unique piece of Norway.
Jean-Marc, similarly, how are you seeing aluminum versus steel necessarily?
Probably when you want to compare steel and aluminum, there are some advantages of both. As Thor mentioned, some products have advantage, depend on the use and the situation. But if you had to have a kind of exact summary about what aluminum can provide you if you need to substitute a piece in steel, it's probably the lightweight. You will have a piece for the same functionality with the same structural resistance that is usually between 25 and 30, 40% max lighter. So that's an important thing, especially if you need to move the stuff for a car, for a train or a bus. If it is lighter, then you will certainly use less energy to move. And then the formability is also extremely interesting. And I think this is why designers like to work with aluminum, because the extrusion process or the rolling process allow you to have incredible shapes that may be a little bit more challenging to do with other materials that are not especially extruded or produced the same way. And then it's a very durable material, not as long as the stones of Thor, because those are eternal material. But aluminum is a very long-lasting element. It's not corroding because it is self-protecting itself from corrosion. So it is lasting quite long. and keeping its strength as well during the years. So if you need to apply aluminum in very harsh conditions at the seaside, for instance, it is certainly a wise and obvious choice.
Interesting. And you made a great point there too when you talked about design. So we had talked a little bit earlier about how design informs engineering and how engineering and design partners well together. What is Norwegian design to you, and how do you see that really creating more value for the products, the natural materials, the building materials, and what might otherwise be considered a building commodity?
Yeah, first I'd like to mention that I really think that now Norwegian designers are excelling, and it's so exciting both to follow them and also to work with them. And I see design for me is a combination of simplicity with function and also high-end natural materials. And of course, design is what brings materials alive. And this is essential for our products to be relevant. So as a larvae kite, it's both a decorative thing, but also a highly functional at the same time.
Yeah, you've worked with quite a bit of different designers and the various products that they've come up with in dealing with your stone. It's really interesting to see that communication between how you see your product and how they see your product. And the branding you've been able to form and evolve through that collaboration has been really authentic and interesting. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful Norwegian design. Similarly, Jean-Marc, how do you see designers really informing and contributing to, I suppose, even elevating a product that is otherwise functional, but creating this sense of elevation and experience in the products?
Well, for me, designers are the architect of objects. And a finished object that is launched, actually, it has faced a series of successful iterations to come to the end product. And what I like with designers is actually they are able to embed a lot of features, thinking about the full life cycle of their product. So it's dealing with raw materials, it's dealing with the operations to produce, with the use. And now, since several years also, they have to take into account the packaging, which is really important, but also the end of life. And being the architect of objects, I think they have a true responsibility. The advantage also they have is that what they are creating is something that you can touch with all your senses, not only the touch sense, but also you see that with your eyes. And this is extremely interesting for us, being a supplier of raw components to work with designers and to see how the different pieces are evolving from sketches into the final production. This is extremely exciting to see how, let's say, the first sketch of a designer coming to our engineers, and sometimes we don't speak the same language, but we tend to collaborate better and better together. You see those sketches evolving with new features, adding some more possibilities, and this is always, I think, when you see the comparison of this is the request of the designer with a lot of good ideas, and then what is produced at the end, there are those very tiny variations that said that, okay, a lot of expertise has been put into those pieces by the designers and by the, let's say, the engineers. And this is what I really love with design.
That's super interesting. I love how you said the architects of objects. Very, very interesting. While we're working on these technical aspects of creating a proper material, then what happens when it goes into the hands of somebody who polishes it to create not just a function, but also an object of true delight and experience. Like the Peace Bench, you had collaborated on that was a material that expressed quite a bit of layers of existential values and human connection. The idea being that to facilitate a conversation, the best weapon is a conversation, and creating this arc, which was an architectural element to bring people together. So very interesting that these raw materials, these natural materials, can really facilitate more esoteric concepts and ideas of existentialist human existence. And I guess that's what design does with these materials. So something interesting in talking with you is the idea of how in Norway, with even at the end of life of the business itself, that you're still responsible for the site, for the materials left behind, for whatever your brand and company leaves behind. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you've taken responsibility not only for the materials you put into the world, but for the very existence of the business itself?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have very strict regulations to how we can operate while we are operating. And we are also challenged on how to minimize waste and how to generate as little as waste as possible. But we have also very high ambitions when it comes to returning the quarry areas when we finish the quarrying. And of course, we have a very big responsibility in the way that we extract the materials. So also for afterlife of the area where we quarry, there are very strict regulations in Norway, and we are very proud of that also, because there's a plan for the area where we extract from when we open and how it's going to look like after we finish the quarrying. Today in Norway, all companies that do mining, they have to provide a security, financial security that is also there when should the company cease to exist. So that means that there are funds to remove buildings and equipment to secure the area. And you also have to make a plan for future use of that area. And one use that we see today, as we are also going down into the land, we see big possibilities in the future for landfill, because as we do construction and of buildings and roads and everything, there's a lot of soil that has to be moved and to be put somewhere. And this is a very good after use of the quarry. And then when you fill them up again, they can become housing areas or industrial areas, or we can also remake landscape. But everything is about returning the areas to the community again the day that we end the quarrying.
That's amazing to me, the fact that you have to have some financial investment and savings even for the end of business. It would be amazing if all the empty Walmarts across the U.S. had that mandate and infrastructure so that those could have been removed. It always interests me to drive past an enormous building that has been abandoned for years, and I wonder who owns that site and why is it just sitting there. So absolutely fascinating that you actively as a business work to preserve or reuse even the sites that you've consumed and have a plan should the business change or disappear later in life. So that's really interesting. Jean-Marc, has Hydro reused some of the mining spaces, or you're touching a lot of different countries. So has there been some of that infrastructure similarly within your business structure to reuse or give back that site to the countries or lands and communities that own them?
Well, yes, of course, because if you are an industrial company, you have the responsibility to take care about the sites you are working on. And whenever you are expanding, closing, or opening a new premises, you have to mitigate your footprint. So definitely, yes, this is something that is extremely well thought for Hydro and for a lot of let's say modern industrial companies with a lot of risk assessment. And you can see risk assessment as being a burden, but not for me, because I think it's also a way to improve. When you know that you need to cope with strict regulations in Norway and in Europe or in other parts of the world as well, you can prepare for the future. And preparing for the future is be preparing if something bad is happening, you are ready. So risk assessment is extremely important for us. We also do climate risk assessment. That means to make simulations about what will be the weather and the, let's say, the atmospheric and environment conditions on those premises, on those locations in the future. And that's 10, 20, up to 50 years. And even in a part of the world that you may think it's stable, like Norway or Luxembourg, for instance, things can change in 30 or 50 years when it is about the climate. Aridity, excess of raining water, earthquake, tsunamis, that kind of stuff. You can today simulate with the technology that is available. So that's something also we use to prepare ourselves for a future possible threat. And that's, I think, extremely positive because it's making the sites safer for the workers, but also for the environment.
Absolutely incredible to think that full scope and even into the future for unanticipated catastrophes, threats, or dangers, to be able to kind of guard against that and offer up resources to react to that, even if we don't know what those reactions are. So absolutely incredible. Even though we're talking about materials here, there's a holistic approach to the way you do business, to the way you would end a business, to legislation towards how you treat the people within the companies and the countries you serve, on a broad spectrum of both creating energy and raw material.
We have also seen designers and companies using sustainability, embedding sustainability in the design of their object, even in luxurious objects. We have had some demands from luxurious brands to add sustainability. So that means this is something that is today part of the design process. And we have here two nice examples of raw material that are noble. Stone and aluminum. I think it's a very nice combination. Collaborating with designers is actually understanding their perception. They have an idea of what they want to achieve. They may not have all the answers, and so I think that suppliers, advisors can provide them with some of the info that we are specialized into. I think that more and more products need to last longer. They need to be they need to be designed in a way they will be recycled in the future, that they need to be scalable, more flexible, provide more uses. So we believe that design is part of the sustainability challenge. It's part of the circular economy. And for us, clearly, designers are stakeholders. We consider them as more than customers, because once they make use of a raw material and is made with successful applications, they will use that material for something else. If they are designing a table with stone and aluminum, it's a success. They are very pleased with that. Maybe the day they will do cladding, or they will propose the service for a different object, they will make use of those two materials as well.
Very cool. That gives a whole new term to this idea of convertibles. And Norway and Scandinavia in general is known a lot for creating products that have a dual purpose. But I love this idea of something having a second life built into its first life's design. And that, as you mentioned, the collaboration between engineers and designers really has to take place then. The fact that an engineer and a designer can sit at the table and think about that more holistically, about the potential future lives of products, is a really interesting idea. Sor, how do you see collaborating more with engineers and designers to create new products or to create second life in products?
We see that as very important for the future and interesting. And of course, to design new materials and or ways of using our stones, but also combining them with other materials. That being aesthetics when it comes to combining colors and into design, but of course also building systems. And I think that the combination, as you mentioned earlier, Jean-Marc, with aluminum building systems, which are matching with natural stones for cladding or tiles, for example. I believe, okay, maybe the initial cost is a bit higher than alternatives, but I think that it's difficult to beat the cost over time with very low maintenance and extreme durability materials. So I think it's a very interesting combination.
The two products definitely working together could really create something interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you see that playing out, or what a collaboration between the two companies might look like?
For building systems, when it is about fenestration or curtain walls or closing the building envelope, of course, you can use several materials for making the fenestration systems. And aluminum is one of them, which has a lot of interesting characteristics when it is about the size, the durability, the stability, and allowing to make very large open glazed areas. But of course, you have also the outer opaque parts that you need to fill. And today, different type of products are used, and stone can provide certainly that touch of durability, extreme durability, protection against rain as well, but also something that will not fade during the year. The color will stay the same, so very, very stable. So there are opportunities, I think, that where we could attach and see how stones cladding or stones element can be embedded into building systems and curtain wall systems, for instance. It's done already today, but that collaboration can go the next mile, showing more durability and more sustainability.
That's a really interesting idea to think of you two collaborating on a project. Are there other industries or countries that inspire you and your work?
Well, I think on countries for sustainability, we have seen since the last 10 years, more and more countries and authorities embracing sustainability. You have that in Europe, but you have that in other countries in the world as well. having different approaches, but having the same goal is to reduce the impact of people on the environment. So it's difficult to give you a list of countries which could be the best. I will of course mention my home country. Luxembourg is a small country, but doing a lot for sustainability. A remarkable example could be Denmark, Holland, I would say, Costa Rica as well, Korea, Japan for some of their actions. I mean, nearly everyone has done something very specific and where other countries can learn from. One thing maybe a little bit interesting to see is the countries that have prepared or issued a guideline or framework for more circular economy into their society and companies. And you have like Norway, for instance, but Denmark, Holland, Finland as well, UK, France, Germany, Italy, they've all issued, those circular economy guides, setting up ideas, but also framework and requirements, as well as resources to allow people and companies and administration to go more towards circular economy.
When you mention Norway, I think we aim to be in the forefront when it comes to the environment. And although we're a small population, so we can see that maybe the impact in total for the world is not the biggest, but we believe that going and show what could be possible. But I also agree very much with Jean-Marc that it's you find people everywhere that find new solutions. So traveling to different countries, meeting different companies, and to hear about what they are doing and how they work with continuous improvements. That's what really drives us forward to meet other people and to discuss and learn what they are doing, and then work on those solutions to see if they are applicable also where you are operating.
And it can be very small companies like designers developing design objects, but you can have that with very, very large and well-known organizations which are today producing furniture, or cars. So this is really exciting to see that aside from all the technical discussions on the things that we need to deliver to them, as well as the price, the supply chain, today sustainability is part of that discussion as well. And sometimes, and more than sometimes, quite often, they are coming with requirements or ideas. And, we have not thought about that. Let's do that, for ourselves as well. So this interaction with customer, for me, it's what I like in our job is we learn also on sustainability from our customers.
Yeah, for sure. We also see the same. That's also very exciting for us now that we started moving away from being at the beginning of the value chain, delivering raw material. But now that we talk about branding and we work through the entire value chain, we learn things all the way. It's really, really inspiring.
Well, thank you, Thor, and thank you, Jean-Marc, so much for sharing your perspectives and taking the time today to walk us through sustainability and materials on all aspects of business and production. And thank you, Design Talks Now, for facilitating this conversation.
Thank you, Garrett, Jean-Marc, and Tor Anders for demonstrating what is possible and showing us that we can find successful solutions that are sustainable, resilient, and conscious to not upset our ecosystems further. You inspire us, and we know that we can improve our practices even on smaller local levels. And thank you all for joining us. Next week, we continue our international perspective with Latvia. It's super interesting. Join us. And until then, please stay safe, stay smart. Design stands together.